The things that make me happy are when I've not got to look at a clock.
And eating good food really makes me happy.
Just being here really, it's just life is good, isn't it?
Just getting what you want.
She makes me happy. The sunshine, music, just being, I don't know, healthy.
I like to party, I like to go out.
Hang out with friends, going dancing.
I guess money also makes you happy.
Something where you're not relying on money.
My cat.
My nephew.
My wife makes me really happy. And drinking.
A lying. So being comfortable.
Sleeping, really.
And movies as well.
Watching Liverpool beat Man United away.
Just be drunk.
I don't actually know what makes me happy.
More to life.
More to life.
I'd like to think there's more to life than this.
I often wonder if there is. I don't think there's more to life.
I'd like to think there is though.
I don't know really.
Don't know everything that goes on in life, do you? So
Yes, I do think there's more to life than this.
I don't know, really.
Well, welcome to Alpha and congratulations on getting here, because I think it's one of the hardest things and certainly something that I don't think I would ever have done. For much of my life, I was not a Christian. I wasn't brought up as a Christian. My father was a secular Jew, and my mother was not a churchgoer. And really, I didn't like this kind of thing at all. Occasionally, I was dragged along to a talk like this. I remember the first time I was dragged along to a talk like this, I was determined not to listen to one word the guy said. And I remember there was a clock behind him, and I decided I was just going to watch the hands on the clock go around, because I thought that would be more interesting than listening to what he was going to say. I had no interest in Christianity or church. All my associations with church were negative. I thought of it as boring, dreary, made me feel slightly guilty. I didn't know quite why I felt guilty about it. And I just thought, God, Jesus, all that stuff is just not true. My father was an agnostic, but I became an atheist as a teenager. I don't know why, I sort of decided that I was a determinist. And I described myself very pretentiously as a logical determinist. And I argued against the existence of God. I wrote an essay at school disproving the existence of God, so I thought. And I would actually quite enjoy just arguing with Christians and trying to prove that there is no God. And also I thought, this stuff's just not relevant to my life. I was having a great time, I was enjoying my life, friends, parties, just having a good time. And I couldn't see what some guy who'd lived 2,000 years ago, 2,000 miles away, what relevance that could have to my life. And yet, I think deep down now, looking back, I would say that something was missing. I didn't go around at the time saying something's missing. But why I say that is because I wasn't really living the moment. I wasn't living the day. I was always looking forward to something else. When I get this, then I'll be happy. Maybe this is the answer. I even remember as a teenager at school thinking, when I'm a prefect, that would be great. And I became a prefect, a very lowly prefect. And for 3 weeks, it was great being able to boss people around. But after about 3 weeks, I started thinking, it's got to be more to life than this. I thought, well, maybe when I leave school, that will be the answer. When you left school, 3 weeks, that was great, freedom. After about 3 weeks, I thought, it's got to be more to life than this. I thought, maybe if I get a girlfriend, somehow or other I managed to get a girlfriend. And after about 3 weeks, it's got to be more to life. And I think it's easy to go through life. You get to the next stage, you get to whatever it is, and then you think, is this it? There's got to be more to life than this. Bernard Levin, that's one of the great columnists of the last century, writing a long time ago, but he wrote this. He said, he wasn't a Christian, and he would often say, one time he wrote, for the 14,000th time, I'm not a Christian. But this is what he wrote. He said, countries like ours are full of people who have all the material comforts they desire, together with such non-material blessings as a happy family, and yet lead lives of desperation, understanding nothing but the fact that there is a hole inside of them. And however much food and drink they pour into it, however many motor cars and television sets they stuff it with, however many well-balanced children and loyal friends they parade around the edges of it, it aches. Russell Brand said this. He said, drugs and alcohol are not my problem. Reality is my problem. Drugs and alcohol are my solution to fill up a hole inside of me. And I think looking back, that's what I was experiencing. There was a kind of like a hole, sort of like a hunger, maybe a spiritual hunger. And Jesus said, I'm the bread of life. He said, I'm the one who can satisfy this spiritual hunger that really nothing else satisfies. I heard a Japanese woman describe it like this. She said, in Japan, it's like we have two stomachs. We have one stomach for ordinary food, for meat and potatoes and that kind of thing. And that's like, I guess, the equivalent to the kind of things Bernard Levin was talking about. Good things, maybe, possessions and relationships and all that kind of things. That fills up one stomach. But she said, it's like I've got another stomach. And she described this as the rice stomach. She says, unless we eat rice, we don't feel satisfied. And I guess if Jesus had been speaking to her, he'd have said, I'm the rice of life. I'm the one who can satisfy this other stomach, this kind of spiritual hunger. Now, why is that? Well, Jesus said this. Jesus said, I'm the way, and I'm the truth, and I'm the life. I'm the way. We had some friends who, when their children were younger, they had a Swedish au pair girl. And this Swedish au pair girl hadn't quite mastered all the English idioms. And one time the children were having a big row in an upstairs bedroom. She ran upstairs, and what she meant to say is, what on earth are you doing? But what she actually said is, what are you doing on earth? Now that's a great question to ask. What are you doing on earth? In other words, where have I come from? Where am I heading? Who am I? What's the point of my life? Is there any real meaning and purpose to life? These are what you might call like the first order questions of life. And a lot of people spend a lot of their life trying to find some kind of ultimate meaning or purpose in life. I think of the great Russian novelist Leo Tolstoy, wrote War and Peace, Anna Karenina. He also wrote another book called A Confession, in which he told his life story. And he described how, as a child, he rejected Christianity. And he started to search for meaning and purpose in his life. And at first he thought, life's just about having a good time. Just make the most of life. Have fun. And he entered the social whirl of Moscow and St. Petersburg. He drank heavily. He was promiscuous. He led basically a wild life. And he found that kind of left him feeling a bit empty. He thought, well, maybe money is the answer. He'd inherited a lot of money, and he started to make a lot of money out of his books as well. And he found money's kind of like seawater. The more you drink of it, the more thirsty you are. That didn't satisfy. And he thought, well, maybe like fame, importance, success, if I could be really successful. And he wrote what the Encyclopedia Britannica describes as one of the 2 or 3 greatest novels in the whole of world literature. It still didn't satisfy him. I was interested in something that the actor Jim Carrey said this. He said, I think everyone should get rich and famous and do everything they ever dreamed of so they can see it's not the answer. And Tolstoy saw that that wasn't the answer. And he thought, well, maybe it's all about kind of relationships, marriage, family life. He married in 1862 and had a very happy family and 13 children, which he said distracted him from his search for the overall meaning of life. He was surrounded by what looked like, everyone looked at him, Tolstoy would say, wow, you've got everything, you've got complete happiness. And he said, yet one question drove him to the verge of suicide. And the question was this: what meaning has my life that the inevitability of death does not destroy? And he started to think, well, the philosophers must have an answer to this. The scientists must have an answer. So he started to search in every field of science and philosophy to an answer to the question, why do I live? And the only answer he came up with was this: in the infinity of space and the infinity of time, infinitely small particles mutate with infinite complexity. He didn't find that very satisfying. And then he looked around at his friends, his contemporaries, and they weren't really even facing up to the questions. And eventually he found, in the very poor people of Russia, he found that they had found the answer in their faith in Jesus Christ. 100 years later, nothing's changed. Freddie Mercury, the lead singer in the rock group Queen, had amassed a huge fortune, attracted thousands of fans, but he admitted in an interview shortly before his death that he was desperately lonely. This is what he said. He said, "You can have everything in the world and still be the loneliest man. Success has brought me world idolization and millions of pounds, but it's prevented me from having the one thing we all need: a loving, ongoing relationship." And ultimately, there is only one relationship that is totally loving and goes on forever. And that is a relationship with God. And Jesus said, I'm the way to that relationship. So what difference does it make? I had never been to an optician in my entire life. I don't know why, I just managed to avoid it. About 12 years ago, I started having difficulty reading, and I met an eye doctor, and he said, look, all you need to do is go to the chemist, get a cheap pair of glasses, or actually get lots, put one in every room, and gradually go up the grades. So that's what I done. I put one in every room. In fact, they all tended to end up in one room, and I could never find them. But the basic principle worked until last September. Last September, I started to get headaches. My wife, Pippa, very sensibly suggested, why don't you go to an optician and see whether it's something to do with your eyes? So I went to this optician, and she did these tests on me, and she said, not only do you need much stronger reading glasses, but you also need glasses for ordinary life. I said, I don't need glasses for ordinary life. I can see perfectly well. Thank you very much indeed. And I thought, she's just trying to sell glasses. That's what opticians do, I thought. So I went to another optician, and I said, well, please test my eyes. And this one came up with exactly the same results as the other one. So I thought, well, I'm not going to wear the glasses, but at least maybe I'll get some and just try them. So after they made the glasses, I went back, and the reading glasses were great. And then I said, well, I'm not going to wear the other glasses, but at least I'll try them on. And I put them on, and I went, oh, my goodness. I can see everything. It's like 3D. And I said, perhaps I shouldn't have said this. I can see people's spots. And there's a little gathering happened in the optician. I think they were pleased with the satisfied customer, but also quite amused. And they gathered around, sort of watching me. And I just could not believe it. I went out. I got on my bike. I could see the details and the trees and the flowers. I could see the other cars, which was a help as well. Now, I could see before, but I could really see with ease. And that to me is like the difference Jesus makes. C.S. Lewis said, I believe in Christianity in the same way that I believe that the sun has risen. Not only because I can see the sun, but by the sun, I see everything else. And to me, it's like Jesus is the lens through which we see God. He's the way to God. And also, he's the lens by which we see the world in a totally different dimension and clarity. Jesus said, I'm the way. And he said, I am the truth. Because you could say, well, that's great. So nice for you. You found in this relationship with Jesus, you find meaning and purpose in your life. That's great for you, but it's not for me. Logically, that can't be the case. Because if it's true for everyone. And if it's not true, it's not great for me. So it really matters whether it's true. C.S. Lewis put it like this. He said, Christianity is a statement which, if it's false, is of no importance. And if it's true, it's of infinite importance. The one thing it can't be is moderately important. So that's the question, is it true? We'll look at that in a lot more detail next week. But for me, it was through, I was all my family are lawyers, and I wanted to look at the original documents. I wanted to look at the sources. And for me, it was through reading those documents, which we find in the New Testament, that I came to the conclusion, it's true. And it has astonished me how much evidence there is for the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. Of course, there are many highly intelligent people who are atheists. But equally, there are many highly intelligent people who've looked at the evidence, who've come to the conclusion that it's true. Historians. One former professor of modern history at Oxford University described the resurrection as the best attested fact in history. I hadn't really realized how many of the pioneers of modern science were believers. Descartes, Newton, Kepler, Galileo, Copernicus, Faraday, Boyle, Mendel, Kelvin, Pasteur, Lister, Maxwell, Simpson. Or take one of the greatest scientists of our time, Francis Collins, who was director of the historic Human Genome Project, one of the most respected genetic biologists in the world. He talks about how he investigated the evidence. And he was amazed, he said, at the historical evidence for Jesus Christ. And he describes going out one day and looking at the beauty of creation. And then he knelt in the dewy grass and he gave his life to Jesus Christ. Or take lawyers. I practiced as a barrister, and one of the people I most admired, in fact, arguably the greatest lawyer of the last 100 years, was a man familiar to many of you, Lord Denning, towered over the legal profession, this brilliant mind. Also very well known for his Christian faith. He'd used these powers of analysis to look at the evidence and come to the conclusion it's true. His Bible was the most tattered book in his library. He was so interested in the evidence for Jesus. Now, when Jesus said, I am the truth, the Hebrew understanding of truth was really not just intellectual truth, head knowledge, but heart knowledge. In other words, truth as experienced. What's the difference between intellectual and heart knowledge? Forgive me using this analogy, but I've been married to my wife, Pippa, for 37 years. But supposing before we were married, before I'd even met her, I went into a bookshop, and there was a book in there with the title, Pippa, The Amazing Woman. And I picked that up and I thought, oh, that looks really interesting. Chapter 1, her extraordinary intelligence. Chapter 2, her sparkling personality. Chapter 3, her potential to be a long-suffering wife. Chapter 4, her cordon bleu cooking skills. Chapter 5, her sporting ability. Quite a short chapter. But not as short as if it was about my sporting ability, I hasten to add. If I read that book and said, wow, she sounds an amazing woman, that's head knowledge. Now I can tell you she's an amazing woman. That's experience. And when Jesus said, I am the truth, he was talking about an experience of truth, that we could have a relationship with him, an experience that Jesus, not just that there's evidence for the resurrection, but we can actually experience a relationship with the risen Jesus Christ. Jesus said, I'm the way, and I'm the truth. And then he said, and I am the life. He said, I've come that you can have life and life in all its fullness. And he said he'd come to deal with the stuff that stops us having that, to deal with the bad stuff, the things that spoil our lives and stop us enjoying life to the full. I hate shopping. I just loathe it. I'm sort of allergic to shopping. I don't think I'm the only person, because I came across this article in the Evening Standard, which was entitled, Official, Men Find Shopping Stressful. Please don't misunderstand me. I don't want to suggest any gender stereotypes, but I just want to read you what, this is not my words, this is what the article said. It said, male stress levels soar when they're faced with the dilemma of choosing gifts and coping with crowded shops. The research was conducted by psychologist Dr. David Lewis, who monitored blood pressure and heartbeat before, during, and after the shopping trip. The peak stress levels were equivalent to emergency situations experienced by fighter pilots or policemen going into dangerous situations. Even the thought of going shopping was enough to send stress levels soaring, with more than 70% of men recording above average readings before leaving home. Now that is what I feel about shopping. I find shopping immensely stressful, and I try to avoid ever going shopping. But a few weeks ago, in the Christmas sales, Pippa persuaded me to go shopping. And we went in, and she very kindly bought, I got a new sweater. This is a new sweater. It doesn't look new because it's like all the other ones, but it is actually a new sweater. So she bought me a new sweater, and then we went into another ghastly shop to get her, it's called Zara. So, not that there's anything to get if you work for Zara, it's a great shop, great place to work, great place to shop. Anyway, it's only ghastly because they're so big, and it was so crowded. All the shops were so crowded, but this one was particularly crowded. We went in there and we looked around and you couldn't really see anything because there were so many people, so we decided to go without getting anything. As we were going out the door, the security alarm went off. And these security guys just moved in really quickly, and they stopped everyone who was leaving. And what they did was, because there were loads of people coming in on that side, and there were loads of people trying to leave on that side. And we were in the middle, and we were part of the group that they stopped. They stopped 6 people. And they isolated the 6 of us and put us in a little ring. And this crowd here were watching, and this crowd here were watching. And then each of the 6 had to go through the security one at a time. First one went through, fine. Second one went through, fine. Third one, fourth one, all fine. Then it was Pippa's turn to go through. She went through, fine. That left me. Then I went through security, and off went the alarms. And I thought, oh my God, I felt so guilty. What had I done? I must have accidentally picked up something in the shop. I was going to be caught shoplifting. I was going to be arrested. I was going to be prosecuted for theft. I was probably going to end up in prison. I just felt so guilty. And then and this crowd was watching here, the crowd were watching here. They could see the guy had been caught. And then the security said, excuse me, sir, we need to search your bags. So I said, okay, search my bags. And they searched my bags, and in it, they found this sweater with the security tag from the shop we'd been in before that had set off the alarm. Now, I felt so guilty, but that's false guilt. But there's also such a thing as real guilt, and I feel that also from time to time. And Jesus came to deal with our guilt. And this is the amazing news. God loves you. You are loved. It's the most important thing to take away from this course. You are loved. God loves you. And he came in the person of his son, Jesus, to die on a cross for you and for me. And he took all of our guilt, all of our bad stuff, in your place, in my place, in order that we should be free to enjoy life to the full. And this is the most amazing, wonderful news. And to me, it was totally life-changing. I prayed a prayer similar to the one that's in the back. There's a little booklet called Why Jesus, which there are lots of them around. Please do take one. There's a prayer in the back which you can pray, which I prayed something like that. And it was a prayer in which I encountered Jesus. And it totally changed my life. Doesn't mean to say everything's easy. I don't believe it's easy to be a Christian today. In fact, I think it's really hard to be a Christian today. I read an article in the Sunday Times about Alice Cooper, the rock musician, and he describes his conversion. And he says this: "It hasn't been easy combining religion and rock. It's the most rebellious thing I've ever done. Drinking beer is easy. Trashing your hotel room is easy. But being a Christian, that's a tough call. That's real rebellion." And it's not easy, but what I would say is my experience of this relationship with God through Jesus. I would say it's not boring. It's not untrue. It's not irrelevant. It's really exciting. I do believe it's true. And it's so relevant to our lives. And I found that Jesus really is the bread of life. He's the one who gives us meaning and purpose. He's the one who satisfies this hunger. There's so much to explore during this course. I want to encourage you to discuss, to explore together. This is a really exciting thing to do. But what I've found is that Jesus really is the way, the truth, and the life. And in this relationship, we find life, and life in all its fullness.